Okay, so I'm not driving. Usually I'm driving when I do this, but I'm not driving. I bought this selfie stick at Five Below. I think it was $5. So we'll see how this goes. It's interesting. I'm usually about 20 years behind in the technology, so that leads me to believe that these selfie sticks are about 20 years old. And it's my first time to have one. So, you know, I really don't know what to say. More specifically, I don't know what to say. I should say, what I mean to say is that I don't know what not to say. So my approach to these types of situations is just to throw caution to the wind and say everything. Might not be the right approach, but I don't like to be emotionally or verbally constipated. You know, I don't like to have things sort of built up, you know? For me, it kind of goes along with being a conduit as opposed to a reservoir, right? Or a conduit as opposed to a repository, or a fiber optic cable as opposed to a like a nub, you know, a dead end. You know? And people obviously say, and the temptation is very great to say, well, wait until you have something good to say. Wait until your message is, you know, refined and polished and all that. And that's not really me, you know. I'd rather be raw and organic as opposed to refined and polished. I think where we are, the revolution that's occurring in the world is a return to the raw and the organic. Because we've seen how the refined and the polished, how unreliable they are. And obviously, raw and organic can be unreliable because you can't trust everything everybody says. There are some people you can't trust anything they say. But the difference is, with a healthy ecosystem of diverse voices, at least you have an awareness that many positions, many thoughts, many opinions, many points of view exist, right? When things are raw and, not raw, when things are polished and refined, it's like a monolithic message that's going out to everyone. So it might be okay, it's probably not, but it might be okay as long as those people are trustworthy. I still think it's not, because nobody's that trustworthy. But let's just say for the moment, for the sake of conversation, that it is. It might be, but the problem is, once they become installed, ensconced as the spokespeople for whatever issue, then when they do turn bad, how is anybody to know? I mean, how are you to know when they are the only voice, when they are the only perspective? And that's where you get into this reality, or this dynamic where people just laugh and giggle when they hear somebody say something that isn't mainstream or isn't the quote-unquote official point of view. And they actually believe that their laughing and their giggling is a persuasive means of communication. I mean, and to be honest, it is persuasive, but it's persuasive through intimidation, right, and oppression, and sort of like an emotional tyranny, right? It's persuasive for those reasons. So it's just rotten all the way around, from top to bottom, side to side, front to back, inside to out. It's just a rotten type of a situation. That monolithic voice where you have these three people are the spokespeople for that issue A. In issue B, you've got those two people. In issue C, you've got those four people. And anything that's outside the scope of anything that those people have to say about either one of those issues respectively, well then the proper response is just simply to laugh and giggle and say something like, oh, that's silly or that's crazy, right? That's kind of the go-to. That's kind of the end-all, be-all go-to of all controlled messages, right? Any controlled message, you know, sort of, it's almost like an implied rule, you know, where if you hear something that's outside the control message, just call it crazy, you know, and that'll take care of it. Settled, we move on to the next issue, you know, and it really is that simplistic, and it really is that debased and depraved, and it really is that manipulative and basically, you know, evil. Really and truly is. The other reason I sort of come down on the side of raw and organic and just letting things be what they are, you know, because raw and organic things, they can be kind of disturbing, right? I mean, you get examples abound, but let's just say you get a bag of apples or a bag of carrots or a bag of potatoes, and they're organic, and you get a potato out, it's got a really bizarre shape, and it's dirty, and it's, you know, maybe it's not colored exactly the way you would. I mean, it can be a little disturbing. It can cause you to be like, whoa, whoa, what the heck is that? That's very unusual, you know? That's a very diverse potato. That's a very diverse, I'm not used to that. I need to investigate. It's a little bit disturbing. I'm thinking it might not be good for me, you know? And that's just the nature of raw and organic, right? So admittedly, raw and organic can be that way. And often is. But interestingly enough, right, you pay extra now for ugly tomatoes, because perfectly shaped tomatoes are, you know, nobody wants them. I mean, who wants food that looks like it came out of a machine? You know, and every item is exactly the same color, exactly the same size, exactly the same texture. I mean, who wants that? You know, nobody wants that. That's like fake food, you know. And Monsanto their reputation got so unbelievably trashed because of their passion for engineering food, not human life, but God only knows, maybe they do that too, but various life forms, you know, various types of plants. You know, they were kicked out of Europe, they're banned here, banned there. The famous story of the Monsanto executive was in South America promoting the safety of the Roundup, you know, and he had a reputation for going around telling people, oh, you could drink a glass of this stuff and it wouldn't hurt you. So finally, I think it might have been Brazil, some reporter down in Brazil called his bluff, and he said, well, it just so happens I have a glass of Roundup right here. Why don't you drink it for us, you know, so you can demonstrate how safe it is. And the guy turned white in the face. He's like, I'm not going to drink that. I mean, so, you know, it's hilarious. It's really hilarious. But they got their reputation for, that came as a result of their passion for refined and polished, producing refined and polished products, was so trash that they had to change their name. I think they were recently sold to the Bayer Corporation, if I'm not mistaken, over in maybe just only in Europe. It's like a $64 billion transaction, you know. So, you know, when a company, an entity, an enterprise, an institution of that size falls that far that they have to give up their very name, I mean, that's astounding. That's just really, it's hard to comprehend the depth. I'm sorry, it's hard to comprehend the distance they had to fall in order to reach that status, you know. So it just speaks to the profound evil that they're engaged in engineering food, and their stories of mice that eat GMO diets, and like in the third generation, you know, these mice have genitalia growing on the top of their heads, you know, and they have hair growing out of their mouths, and you know, so it's crazy, it's bizarre, but you know, it's a crazy, bizarre world that we live in. So, So somebody has to be raw and organic, you know, because the system, you know, the institutionalized education, institutionalized media, institutionalized commerce, institutionalized government, institutionalized religion, institutionalized this and institutionalized that. You know, they train us to be refined and polished, to never say anything that is of an odd shape, you know, to never say anything that is of any cause for concern, you know. So therefore we are not raw and organic, but we are refined and polished. So I choose to err on the side. Is err the right way to pronounce that? Because I listened to, oh man, I'm sorry, I'm digressing here. I listened to the King James Bible and the guy says err. And every time he says err, I'm like, no dude, I think it's err. But anyway, I'm going to say err. You know, I'll let the refined, polished people say err, but I'm going to say err. I choose to err on the side of being raw and organic because it's my nature, but as I contemplate my nature and as I contemplate whether I should go with my nature or go against my nature, I seem to come to the conclusion that maybe in this instance my nature is of some value. It's, you know, it has some value. It might even be quote unquote right, even though right and wrong are like my two most unfavorite words in the world. Another commentary, another video, another time. But so here we go. My brother just, it's hard to comprehend. I mean, as I think about it, as I talk about it, as I contemplate it, it's like it's not even real, you know. Honestly, it's like my body, my spirit leaves my body, and I'm like watching myself talk about something, but I'm not in myself because it can't possibly be me, you know. And so it's like I instantly become overwhelmed by the feeling that this is not real, you know, and then automatically I start feeling like a little bit too casual, a little bit too free, because that part of me that doesn't believe it's real feels like I'm telling a fictional story or something. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. It's just, yeah, you know, it's just, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, it's been very sad, and it's been very bad, and it's just been very, you know, it's just been bad. It's been sad, but anyway, yeah, my brother, you know, he passed away, and he did it to himself, and I don't know what to say. I mean, I've already established that we live in a very strange and very bizarre world, so I'm going to continue on with that thread, that not that what happened to my brother is strange and bizarre, although it is, but it's not strange and bizarre in the same sense that I was talking about things being strange and bizarre before. It's just strange and bizarre. For my brother's case, it's strange and bizarre because he had purportedly, by everybody's accounts except mine, this great passion for life and, you know, and stuff like that. And I didn't really see it that way, but everybody else did, and so that's the cliche that falls off of everybody's lips. God knows my family is not into raw and organic, they're into polished and refined. Even if it's made out of pure plastic, you know, they prefer that. I'm sure a lot of families are like that, you know, and in certain situations, in certain senses, and to certain degrees, I'm sure I'm like that too, you know, but generally I think I tend to be a little bit more raw and organic. It's just like, can we just be real here? You know, that's like the cry of my life, you know. It's like, can we just be real? You know, what is this nonsense? I don't understand it. This nonsense, all this fakery and all this pretension and all this, I mean, which to me, at the end of the day, it just calculates out as stupidity, you know? Like a computer program. Hal in the movie Odyssey 2010, whatever it was, you know, the computer program always calculated the meaning will have to be 42, you know? And, you know, after running this like 20-year calculation or something, you know? And so the answer's 42, right? That's the old joke, right? So to me, it's like as I run everything through my mind and the computer program, and everything at the end of it it just spits out stupidity. It's just like, this is just stupid. It's like, what is with all? It just doesn't compute. I don't get it. You know, I really don't. I mean, it just I just don't get it. What's all the fakery? What's all the pretension? What's all the stupidity? What's all the, you know? I mean, if you're sad, say you're sad. If you're mad, say you're mad. If you're sad, be sad. If you're mad, be mad. You know? I mean, what's the big deal? I mean, isn't that what being human is all about? You know? But it's just, when the cliches start flying, that's how you know when people are sad or mad. And it's like, but you don't have any way to know that if you don't know that. I mean, if you don't know that cliches equal emotion, then you're just confused. You're just like, what the heck is going on here? I mean, it's impossible to go from point A to point B. I mean, there's no way to reverse engineer, those rolling waves of cliches. You know, they don't reverse engineer to anything. They just reverse engineer into nothing. You know, so you just have to know that that's what it means, and even when you know that, it's still like confounding. It's still like, what the heck, you know? I mean, it's just still like, God, you just don't know what to think. You don't know what to do. So, I don't know, man. It's crazy, but and this is my life, so I'm just going to talk about it, and maybe it'll help somebody. And I live by the philosophy of one. You know, I'm not here to save the world. I'm here to change the world. But if I change one person, if I save one person, if I help one person, if I bless one person, which I have, so I'm good. I'm good. I'm happy. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, a single soul is of infinite value. So a piece of something that's infinite is itself infinite. So if I help one person, I'm good. I'm golden. I mean, I've gotten an infinite return on a finite investment, right? The finite investment being my life. So I know for a fact I've helped one person, so because they told me, so I mean, as far as I'm concerned, my work is done except anything else that I'm here to do. Then okay, well then fine, I'll do that too. I mean, that's all right. I can do more, but one is good. That's my. So if my ramblings and rantings or raw and organic speech and talk and accounting of things helps one person, then I'm good with that, I'm good with that. I spoke at my brother's funeral and made everybody mad and got myself explicitly disinvited from an extremely angry person from the lunch after the funeral, who a notoriously angry person, just like spends their whole life being angry, basically. But 3 people came up and told me, spoke to me very kindly and I might even go so far as to say complimentary, in a complimentary way. So they were not people that I knew, they were not people in my family, so I wish that I had been able to bless somebody in my family as opposed to strangers, but I don't know. You bless who you bless, I mean, one lady specifically, she actually said to me, "I loved you when you were up there." I was like, oh, wow. Well, then why is everybody else so mad at me? Just doesn't, but like I said, nothing in my family has ever made any sense to me. Nothing, I cannot reverse engineer anything my family says or does into something that it just reverse engineers into nothing. I mean, by the time I get done unwinding things and trying to understand things, it's like, there's nothing there. It's like, what? It's like, I just don't get it, Except I do get it, and I do get it. And it's sinister, and it's ugly, and it's evil. And that's why it's painful. I mean, because who wants to think that, I don't want to think that. I don't want to think that about anybody. I certainly don't want to think that about my family, But that's what I always arrive at. It's like, wow, this is crazy. I mean, like I said, it's a wild and crazy world, It is. It's a wild and crazy world. I don't know how it all works. I just know that it's wild and crazy, In a way, I'm kind of grateful that it's wild and crazy because it's interesting that way, the plastic fake little story they tell us about how the world works and what it looks like and how, no, sorry. Like they got it all figured out, the smug, confident people with all the answers. It's like, no, you're like a weeble wobble. You're made out of plastic, and granted you don't fall down, but you're also not real, so you're fake. And you all your little fake little stories and your fake little books and your fake little curriculums and your fake little, accounts of things and your fake little computer-generated graphical diagrams and your fake little diagrams and your fake little statistical analyses. You fake. It's just like mountains and mountains and mountains and mountains and mountains of fakeness. The sheer volume of it all persuades most people because it is, but that's only because they don't have a view of how vast things really are, and they don't have a view or a feeling of what's real and what's fake. So they just get dazzled by the glittering piles of trash that people put in front of them, and that's what persuades them, So I don't know. I mean, for my roughly maybe, I don't know, probably an overstatement to say my entire life, but certainly my entire adult life, I've always had this sense that it's been me against my family, and there's something wrong with me, honestly. And even the day before my brother's funeral, my sister said to me, "You need help." I mean, it's like I need help. It's like, I think you're directing your ad hoc, amateur psychological diagnosis in the wrong direction, or again, because that's like what they love to say whenever you say something they don't. You need to take medication. You need professional help. I mean, it's like for my entire life, for 50 years, I've heard this. And I mean, when I think of my sisters, I think of those Jurassic Park things, those, what are they called, velociraptors, and they all run around in a little synchronized pack, making these clicking, reptile sounds. That's what I think of, because they just gang up on people, and it's like psychological warfare, And so I've come up with this theory. I've been going to this church where they do exorcisms. Okay, so that's pretty blunt, right? They don't call it that, but I call it that because I prefer to be blunt. It's called Deliverance Ministry, if you're familiar with it. But anyway, so I've been going there. One of the things that they teach there is curses. All right. So I believe in curses. I don't fully understand them, but I believe it. I believe in them. I mean, just in the most generic sense, we all acknowledge, I think, that if you're the son or the daughter of an alcoholic, statistically, you have a greater chance of being an alcoholic yourself. So if you're the son or daughter of an alcoholic, you need to be careful, a little bit, exercise a little bit more care and caution with your treatment of alcohol than if you were not the son or daughter of an alcoholic, right? So maybe our translation, our vernacular, our colloquial way of talking about curses is to use statistics. Maybe that's the way we do it, and it's just the same thing, just with a different lexicon. Possible, So I mean, there is that sense of things. I personally think it runs a little bit deeper than that, or I actually think that there's a very good chance that it runs a lot deeper than that. Everybody knows that all kind of, you start getting into the world of energy, and you start talking about how far, in relative terms, an electron is from the nucleus of an atom, and it's like the moon to the Earth, except maybe even further. And so you start thinking about that. It's like, wait a minute, we're like mostly nothing. We're just and more. Atom is all governed by energy, and we're built of atoms. I mean, energy. And when you start getting at theoretical physics and they start talking about photons on opposite ends of the universe, but one photon affects another photon instantaneously, even though there's a trillion light years of distance between, so there's a lot going on out there that nobody can fully explain, so I believe in curses. I've lived curses. I've had the experience of living under a curse, so I can't really help but believe it, And this curse I call the curse of the three sister curse. Everybody in my family knows that all the troubles in my family started with my grandmother's father, Roger, who purportedly was a literal train-hopping vagabond, and he would just come home and for long enough to get his wife pregnant, and he did that 9 times. She had 9 children. He was never there for her, and but his oldest daughter, my grandmother, just adored him and worshipped him, basically, I think. And that was the beginning of all the problems, because he was her adoration, and her revering and worship of this broken man, who was not always broken. He used to be a music minister, but then, according to my grandmother, the depression came, he lost everything, and he just lost his mind. So I'm not like saying Roger's a horrible person, I hate Roger. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, because God only knows how I would react in a similar situation, But, we all have our limits, right? So basically, he became horribly mean to his family, and who knows? God only knows what his motivation for being mean was. Maybe it's because he felt guilty, he knew what he was doing to people and not doing for people, and so maybe he was acting out his own self-loathing on other people. I mean, that's kind of the way we work, right? I mean, we kind of gravitate toward consistency. If we hate ourselves, we tend to hate other people because it's consistent, I don't think we gravitate towards having split personalities or dichotomous traits in behavior and attitude and feelings. I think we sort of gravitate towards it. If for no other reason, it's just easier, it's less complicated, right? So, but it's also like an affirmation of self-identity. It's like, this is who I am, I think. So, I don't know. I don't want to get off into that too far, but anyway. So, my grandmother, Inez, had 3 daughters. And 2 of those daughters had 3 daughters. And Inez just gave her daughters a brutal, psychologically tortured upbringing. And to the best of my ability to assess, I could be wrong, I'm sorry if this is off base or hard, but to the best of my ability to assess, the 3 daughters passed on that heritage to their 3 daughters, with the exception of one of the 3 daughters of Inez did not have 3 daughters. Okay, so now it has come to pass that in the 2 specific families, okay, that have the 3 daughters, one male member of that house has committed suicide. I don't think it's ill intent. I don't think there's anything conscious going on. I don't think, but I know how my sisters are like a pack of velociraptors. I mean, they gang up on people, and it's like a feeding frenzy of psychological warfare. I'm talking, they all start saying the same thing. It's mean. It's intentional, obvious attempts to silence and intimidate and injure and humiliate and drive people back into their holes, if they even have a hole to begin with. I don't think I have a hole, because, at least not anymore. I think I filled in my hole a long time ago. I don't really get driven anywhere. I just start fighting back instantly. Not always appropriately, maybe very rarely appropriately, maybe never appropriately, I don't know, but I just start fighting back instantly, and they just laugh and giggle, because they think that it's funny when they put somebody in a psychologically constricted or restricted state, and they act as if they've won, and it's just one psychological like game after game, or strategy or scheme after another. And it's basically torture. I mean, it's psychological torture, basically. So I know where they got it from. It's not their fault, but as I am wont to say, fault is for children, responsibility is for adults, and opportunity is for heroes. So I do my best to be a hero and look for opportunities. I try to make responsibility a foregone conclusion or a foregone, consideration. And I try not to focus on fault. It's, obviously we all lean towards being children and obsessing over fault. It's sort of our natural calibration, right? To do that. Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? Whose fault? Whose fault is it? Whose fault? It ain't my fault. Right? So that's the way we lean. But I try, So is this an opportunity? I don't know. I think that there might be somebody out there somewhere in the interwebs, if YouTube even lets this get out, because they're clamping down on anything they don't like, which is just bizarre. It's got to be kind of milquetoast and nicey, bouncy. So anyway, this is getting really long. My phone's about to turn off because it is getting so long. Anyway, it's extraordinarily sad what happened to my brother, but honestly, he had no fight. He had no fight in him. I mean, he basically just cowered at the schemes of these,